Hello, I'm Jamila Musayeva, an international etiquette consultant, author of etiquette books and pre-recorded online courses. If you would like to order my books, they're now available for international shipment worldwide directly on my website. I'll link it here as well in the description box below. You can also join my pre-recorded online etiquette courses. Upon completion, you will receive a certificate of completion. Before I get started with today's video, I want to show you the outfit of the video. So this is a very beautiful, super comfortable and very elegant dress I'm wearing from a brand called Simple Retro. By the way, I still have a valid discount code. It's Jamila10. You can use my code to purchase any Simple Retro dress. I love the brand for its elegance and comfort and feminine styles. I have paired this dress with a Chanel open toe and open back mules with a block heel, which I find super comfortable to wear. Again, I wear them quite often for work. I wear them for daily wear, for casual outings, and I think together they just look very good. And I've opted for this particular look because I wanted to look elegant yet quite casual for today's video. In today's video, I'm going to do an etiquette review of different kinds of TV series that have been really popular lately. I have my own etiquette movie club on my Patreon community where every month I publish etiquette reviews for different kind of movies. So far, I've done over 40 different movies. And if you want to watch their etiquette review, you can join my Patreon etiquette movie club. But I decided to do something similar of a kind, but something I've never done on my YouTube before, which is an etiquette review of TV series. Your beloved ones, I'm sure, and there are some really interesting episodes I want to get into. So let's get started with analyzing each episode from different TV series, and the first one is The Gentleman. We see in this clip that Stanley's assistant is decanting the wine. He is first placed a filter paper on a decanter, then he pours the wine slowly but steadily into the decanter. So he has decanted the wine, then he removes the filter paper, and then he pours the wine back into the wine bottle, and then he brings the cork to Stanley and tells him, hands it in and allows him to smell it, and then Stanley approves of wine and it's brought out to the table. It's interesting because this is not a very usual way of decanting the wine. What he does in the beginning is usually the common way, but it's very rarely that then the wine is poured back into the bottle. This happens when it's a very expensive wine. The label matters a lot. It's one of the oldest, finest wines, and the person that is drinking the wine, they want the label to be seen. They want to see the label on the bottle, which doesn't happen when you're drinking the wine from a decanter, because obviously you don't get to see the label anymore. Why is wine decanted? So there are a couple of reasons for that. One is that it is helping to aerate the wine while decanting. So the oxygen gets in touch with the tannins in the wine, and it allows it to emit the aromas and flavors in a much better way. There's also this idea that when you are decanting the wine, you're able to leave the residue that the wine can have at the bottom of the wine bottle, and hence because you're decanting it, you're doing it in a very slow and steady motion, and you're pouring it out so the residue still stays in a wine bottle. So the decanted wine is a lot more clear, it's a lot more clean. And the third purpose is usually for aesthetic, which I consider personally much more beautiful than when served in a wine bottle. I love the shape of a decanter. I find it very elegant, and I think it really makes the table look a lot more fancy when you have a decanter at the table. Again, it's my personal opinion. Not a lot of people are fans of decanters, but I personally really love it. Also, if you're watching here carefully, you see that they've placed a coffee filter paper. You can, place a filter paper or a muslin, a piece of cloth into a decanter in order to make sure that there's nothing, no residue that gets into the decanter. Sometimes you'll see that, the sommelier will light up a candle nearby the bottle while they're decanting the wine so that they can actually see it through the wine bottle if there's any residue traveling, if the wine itself is clear, or once it gets cloudy, they stop pouring it, because that means that it got mixed with the residue and now it's going to make its way to the decanter. It's a very delicate matter that requires a lot of skill and attention to details. So the whole procedure by itself is very beautiful. The reason the cork is first offered to the host, or be it the wine collector or the person who has ordered the wine, is because they are in charge of approving the wine before the wine is served to other guests. And in this case, this is Stanley, who is the wine owner or the owner of the collection, who is the host. So he has to first smell the cork and say if he approves or not. Oftentimes when the wine goes bad, it goes bad from the cork. So if the cork starts smelling, that means it's not of a good quality wine anymore. It no longer is for the consumption. And actually, you cannot usually reject a wine because you didn't like the taste, because it's not what you wanted in the beginning. That's not a valid enough reason to return the wine, especially if it was an expensive bottle of wine. The only time that you can reject the wine is when it has gone bad. So when the cork starts smelling, when the wine is not of a good quality, that's the only valid reason when you can reject the wine. The next TV series I'm going to analyze is Normal People. I really like this TV series, and there is this episode that you are seeing right now on your screen. The girl and a guy got into an argument over whether or not these glasses are correct glasses to serve champagne in. So he says, where are the flutes? Coupe glasses are not meant for champagne, to which she responds that, these are also the right way to serve champagne. It's just something from my dad's collection. These are more vintage glasses to serve champagne in. This episode actually reminded me of the fact that a lot of people don't really recognize coupe glasses as something we serve champagne in, because flutes have really become much more popular in the late 20th century, and up until now they've become so symbolic of champagne drink. We see it emblematic in pretty much every single movie about New Year's party, Christmas party, socializing, where we see this champagne flutes clinging, people clinging their champagne flutes, and so it has really become symbolic of champagne drink. But the truth is, actually, before flutes became popularized, it was coupe glasses that were the ones that people serve champagne in. They have more, I guess, vintage, classy vibe to it, so I always get associated with Great Gatsby movie. And actually, in the Etiquette movie club that I do in my Patreon community, I have explained this vastly in the analysis of the Great Gatsby movie, how the coupe glasses were really much the most popular ones for serving champagne. Again, these glasses are smaller, they have a smaller, rounder bowl, they're in a shorter stem. They are very beautiful aesthetically, but they're much more hard to hold on to and socialize and walk around, because again, the bowl is quite narrow. It's quite short in its length, and then it's flatter. So if you're walking around with a drink, the chances of you spilling the drink is much higher than if you were to carry your drink in a flute, because again, it's longer, the drink is kind of protected in it. Also, it's much more difficult to clink glasses, that coupe glasses. It's much easier to do so with flutes, and so flutes have become the party glass, so to speak. We see that the shape of coupe glass is actually believed to be designed after the Marie Antoinette breast. Again, it's something people used to say back in the days, but there are much more gentle, and hence people have to be very careful when they are, walking around with a coupe glass. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that nowadays we see a lot more cocktails served in coupes, like martini, and we see sparkling wines served mostly in coupe glasses. So almost the flutes have taken over the market, but you will still see some places where they serve champagne in coupe glasses, and they are not wrong. In fact, they are right, and they're going for a more retro vibe. So in this episode, the guy was trying to look like he knew things, like he knew what is for what, but actually he was wrong. So I guess a thing we can learn from this episode is that do not say something out loud unless you know for sure that you're going to be right about it. So he looked like a fool, to be honest, to me in this episode. Let me know what you thought of it, and let me know down in the comment section below what did you think about his reaction. The next TV series is White Lotus, and there is this episode when they are out and about for a wine degustation. So we see here that the sommelier is, first he shows the label to the guests, and then he describes whatever it is, and then he pours a small amount into the glass. Usually it's 1/3 of the glass that's filled up for people to get the taste of the wine, because there are usually a selection of wines that they're going to be tasting. So you're not really there to gulp the wine, you're not really there to drink it heavily, but rather get a taste of different kind of flavors and aromas and try out different kinds of wines. And you see here that she gestures for more wine to be poured, and then she proceeds to take the glass and then she gulps down the drink really fast instead of taking small sips. And you see how the rest of the guests with her at the table, they take a look at her in awe, like what is she doing, while they're taking small sips, and before they actually take a sip, they swirl the wine, sniff it gently, and then take a sip. This is actually how you should be tasting a wine when you're at a degustation, and in general when you're out and about enjoying a wine glass with your dinner. You don't gulp it down. You first swirl it a little bit so that it can open up its aromas a little bit. You can take a really short sniff so you can really smell in the flavors, the aromas, the little nose that it might entail, and then you take a sip and leave it a little bit on your tongue so you can actually feel the aftertaste. So you can have this taste once you have actually swallowed the wine. You can actually feel the lingering taste on your palate. Again, degustation is something that is there for the enjoyment. So you're there for the process rather than the end result. Again, the end result is not to get drunk, is not to get wasted, but rather to enjoy the drink, to enjoy the glass, and really take in all the aromas and flavors that you can. So in this episode, we see how things should not be done at degustation, and we see how things should be done when we observe the couple that they are together with. So if you're ever at a degustation, take your time, enjoy your drink, don't rush into drinking. The next TV series is One Day. So we see in this episode the guy's enjoying lunch with his mother out and about in Italy. After they finish the meal, he says, what should we order? And he says we should definitely not order cappuccino, because a cappuccino after 12, it's a big no-no in Italy. And there's a lot of controversy about that. This is something that was back in the days a really strict rule that you wouldn't order cappuccino after 12 p.m. It's not something especially that you would drink after a heavy lunch or dinner. So cappuccino is a drink that Italians usually take for breakfast with something sweet, a pastry, croissant, something that is goes along much better with a croissant or a pastry. But this is something you wouldn't drink because of the digestive reasons. Once you've had a really heavy lunch or heavy dinner, you wouldn't drink a milky drink because it will impede with your digestion. Again, everyone is different. Some people are fine with that. I do understand the logics behind it, and I would say that cappuccino by itself is more like a meal than a drink, because it's a combination of coffee and milk together frosted, so it could be heavier for you to enjoy the drink after you've had a quite filling lunch or dinner. Again, when I was in Italy, I've actually observed that this is still true. I've never seen any Italian order cappuccino after lunch or dinner, though I have seen people order and drink cappuccino after 12 p.m., but this would be if they were only to enjoy the cappuccino on its own, or maybe with some cookie or some pastry on the side. The next TV series is Emily in Paris, and this is a very interesting episode for etiquette purposes. So you see here that Emily and the guy are entering the restaurant, and they're about to take a seat, and you see that she takes a sit at the stool, back stool rather than the chair, and she takes a sit. They'll look at her like in awe, like, what are you doing? And then he points the chair and says, this is for you and this is for your bag. So I found this episode very funny, but I think it very much represents the misunderstanding that can happen when you see a smaller stool around your table. Some people might think it's for little kids, some people might think it's for them, but it's never for you. It's not for a person. It is there for your bag. In Europe especially, it's very popular to offer a little bag stool, so a little chair that doesn't have arms, or maybe even if your own chair doesn't have arms, it doesn't mean that it's not for you. It's just that stool will be much lower in height, so it's for your bag. You might have a hat or whatever it is, but it's a bag stool. Also, some restaurants might not have space for a bag stool, and that's where you will be offered a little bag holder. I've shown it in one of my etiquette videos here on YouTube, where you can hang your bag from a bag holder and leave it at your side, so it's out of the way, not on the floor, out of the way of the waiter, not behind your back, so you have enough space to sit. It's right on a table in front of you, so you get to see it, but it's also hanging there nicely and neatly. So I found this particular episode very funny and amusing, but also very educational, because you get to see the difference between a chair and a stool for your bag. Never take a seat at a smaller one. Always ask, if you are ever in doubt, ask if it's meant for you. But if it's a table for two and there's a smaller stool, then know that that is for your bag and not for you or not your kid. And the last episode that I want to analyze for today's etiquette review is a TV series, one and only and most beloved one lately, Bridgerton. And you see here, it's episode 1 actually from season 1. We see the seating arrangement. I wanted you to pay attention to how everyone is seated down. And there's a comment that Duke makes that remind me a lot of how etiquette has evolved and changed, and how things that were odd or strange back in the days are now very much something we're used to today. So when you look at the seating arrangement, you see that the host, so the eldest brother of the household, and the hosted are seated at the opposite ends of the table. So both of them are at the both ends of the table, and they're facing each other. Mother, being the eldest one at home, she's seated away from the entrance, and the host, so the brother eldest of the household, is seated opposite to her, closer to the door. And then we see that the most important guest here, being the Duke, he is seated to the right of the hostess. So the most honorable guest always sits to the right of the host or the hostess. So because he's a man, he's seated to the right of the hostess. So it's usually how back in the days, and still today in a lot of diplomatic events, people are seated down. So it's male, female, in that order. And here the Duke makes a comment about, it's so lovely and so strange in a good way to see that kids are also at the table seated together with the adults. Back in the days, the reason he makes this comment is because back in the days, kids were not allowed at the table with adults, especially until the age of 7. They were not allowed to be seated with elders. There would be a special place for them in the kitchen, or they would be fed beforehand, and they would not be invited to be seated together at a table. This sounds radical to us nowadays. We think, oh wow, like how could they not? Because we can't imagine any dinner table, any birthday table, even a wedding. Some weddings, of course, have no kids policy, but most of today's events always have kids at the table. So this is something that used to be very odd back in the day, but now it's a norm. Again, etiquette is something that is changing, evolving, and reflecting the societal norms. It's not archaic, as a lot of people often say that, no one needs these rules. We still need rules about how we should live in our best possible way, being kind to each other, being tolerant to each other, and that's where etiquette comes handy. But it also changes with time, as you have seen in this episode. I hope that you enjoyed this etiquette review. If you did, please leave a thumb up. Let me know down in the comment section below what were some of the episodes that you loved the most, or maybe you have more etiquette review suggestions for me. Maybe you have seen a certain clip or video that you want me to analyze. Please make sure to send it on my Instagram through DM, or send it to my email info@jamilamusayeva.com, and I'll be more than happy to review it for you. Thank you, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!